my God! It's SmackDown versus Raw! Sports entertainment will never be the same!
You know, as much as I love wrestling, I'm starting to realize I love wrestling games just a little bit more. We all have that first game that really gets you hooked. For some people, it's No Mercy. For others, it's SVR 2010. For some kid out there, probably there's WWE 2K20, which, poor kid. But I'm definitely lucky to say that my first WWE game that I ever played was the original SmackDown vs. Raw. This game brings back so many memories and so much nostalgia for probably not even just me, a lot of y'all out there as well. And it's just crazy to realize that it's been 20 years, 2 whole decades since this game dropped. The SmackDown vs. Raw series is personally my favorite gaming series of all time, and I've always had love for this game for being the starting point. And I used to play the hell out of this, but there was a point where I put it down, but I always remembered it as a great and fun wrestling game. But then I got older and I discovered the IWC, and that's just full of wonderful opinions, as we all know. And I started to see that feelings on this game were kind of mixed. You know, there's some people that think the game is great, and then there's others that feel like the game is a bit of a letdown. But the ones that feel let down usually are comparing it to what is in a lot of people's minds the greatest wrestling game of all time, Here Comes the Pain. And I mean, that's like comparing Mike and LeBron, or for international people out there, Messi and Ronaldo to almost anybody else. Like, you're gonna look lesser then. So I decided, you know what, in honor of its 20th anniversary, why not go back, take a deep dive, and see just how well this game holds up after all this time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Mo, if you don't already know, and this is SmackDown vs. Raw, 20 years later. First of all, this cover does not hold up well at all. We done with Vince McDiddy. Anyways, let's talk about the game itself. Now, when you start it up, you get this really cool trailer showing the evolution of the WWE PlayStation series from the very first SmackDown game all the way to now. And then once it's time to jump into the game, it will ask you if you're Team Raw or you're Team SmackDown. And for some of y'all that don't know, like, this was a real conversation for us back in the day as kids, man. Like, the brand split was real to us, damn it. And me, I'm Team SmackDown. I still am to this day, man. So I went ahead and chose SmackDown. But if you decide you want to be a traitor and play for the other team, you just got to go in settings and change it to Raw. Which really doesn't mean anything besides what your menu screen looks like. And speaking of the menu screen, this is Exhibit A of how the developers were on freaky timing.
Shucky, ducky, quack, quack.
Man, let me tell y'all, whenever we played this at my cousin's house, we had our own system because his PlayStation was in the living room and my auntie obviously was in and out of that room. So we weren't playing no games, bro. Like, whenever the matches were done, we would decide between each other. Okay, so you're choosing that person, I'm choosing that person, this is the match type we're doing, and just speed through it. But because I'm the younger cousin, and I'm also an idiot, terrible combination, I forgot one time. And that just so happened to be the moment my auntie walked in the room. Let me just say my cousin actually hasn't fully forgiven me for that. But hey, I can't blame the girls dancing on the menu screen because this soundtrack was absolutely stacked, yo. So many dope songs, awesome bands. Like, these SmackDown vs. Raw games really opened my eyes to rock music, and it all started here for this series. And all the match types are still here from Here Comes the Pain, except for one thing. Instead of being able to travel around and fight outside at Times Square or WWF New York or drive around Undertaker's motorcycle, we were left with the options of either a parking lot brawl or a backstage area, which honestly are still very fun and interactive and all, so it's not too much of a hit, it's just a bit of a downgrade. Now, what really hurts the game for a lot of people was this roster, especially if you're comparing it to the year before. But that was honestly the issue with the WWE in general at the time. The actual roster wasn't all that great, especially on the SmackDown side. There were a lot of big names that had left the WWE in 2004, so it does kind of suck to lose the depth for guys like Garrison Cade. But hey, personally, I've always been the type of guy to choose the same few wrestlers, so it never really bothered me too much. But on the legend side, there were some upgrades like Bret freaking Hart for the first time in 6 years. But for that, unfortunately, we had to sacrifice Hillbilly Jim. By the way, can someone check if his Hall of Fame speech is still going? Now let's dive into the meat and potatoes of a wrestling game, the gameplay. First of all, the graphics were definitely improved from the year before. People actually start to look like themselves. for the most part. Arenas are looking better here, the lighting's better, entrances are a little more fleshed out, so even with the lacking roster, it actually felt like THQ, cared to try. Even with that, now we got commentary added back to the matches, which was an improvement from Shut Your Mouth. It wasn't a lot of commentary lines, and it's not exactly good commentary, but at least it's there and it adds more life to the game instead of listening to generic royalty-free background music. 2K Showcase, take notes. As for the actual matches, there were a few changes made. For example, whenever you start up a singles match, there's different mini games, whether it's a shoving battle, a test of strength, or even just a stare down. But hey, if foreplay ain't your thing and you like to just jump straight into the action, there's an option to turn that off in settings.
What did he say?
Hey, if the developers can sexualize shit, why can't I? So it was kind of THQ and Yuke's trying to lean into realism a little bit more, and you can see that when you're actually playing through the matches. The core gameplay is pretty much the same style from Here Comes the Pain. Only thing was that they took away the ramp angle and slowed it down just a little bit, but not to the point where it's unbearable. You can still wild out and have fun like you always have. Another cool addition that they made to the gameplay was the clean and dirty system, aka the face and heel system. But unlike future games, it actually affected how you would wrestle. If you chose to be clean, you would have to do things that fill up your clean bar. Things like taunting, doing top rope moves, basically crowd popping stuff. And once your bar gets full, you would trigger a taunt and your wrestler basically becomes Prime Hogan, where your opponent can't really reverse your moves and your finisher is pretty much unkick-outable. But if you chose to be a dirty wrestler, you would have to do some heelish tactics to fill up the dirty bar, like removing the turnbuckles, hitting your opponent with a weapon, or not letting go of a submission when there's a rope break, which that part was a new addition to the game as well. And you pretty much do the same thing you do with the clean wrestler, except instead of becoming invincible, you get to do a powered up low blow, which would pretty much win you the match. I personally really like that aspect, and I kind of wish they kept it for future games. But I'll definitely take losing that aspect over losing post-match celebrations. Yeah, so for some reason, whenever you win a match, your wrestler just stands around, heavy breathing with his music playing, and you just get to choose if you want to run it back or just exit the game. It's almost like when you get a sneaky link and then immediately being asked the question when you're done, so what you about to do? Okay, that was maybe an extreme example. No, that was definitely an extreme example, but you get my point. Actually, there was one match type that had a celebration animation, and that was the bra and panties match, which is Exhibit B of these developers being some damn freaks. Now, this game had a WWE pay-per-view mode, which was a downgrade from some of the older ones. It was pretty much just creating a match card and playing through it. It was just kind of there and not really much of an incentive. But one cool thing that it did have was the ability to defend custom championships. SmackDown vs. Raw was the first game to introduce Create a Championship, and for its first time, there were a lot of cool options for what you wanted your championship to look like. I've seen a lot of dope designs floating around online from different people that have played the game. But there is one issue here, and that's if you want a decent looking championship, it's gonna have to cost you an arm, leg, and limb. I'm not even playing. Even if you were to grind out season mode or even the new challenge mode, you really could only afford maybe one good looking belt. So it ain't really worth the time, but shout out to this game for starting that mode. But like I mentioned before, this was the first game with a challenge mode where you basically had different matches with different stipulations and varying difficulties that gave you what they call WWE cash that you can use to unlock things like legends, arenas, different movesets for a creative wrestler, or even less clothes for your divas on the menu screen. Yeah, that's Exhibit C. Now let's dive into one more mode in this game. Personally, my favorite part of all the old WWE games, good old season mode. Now what I can say is that this season mode isn't great, but it also isn't bad. I gotta give it some credit because it was the first game to actually try voice acting, which, to be fair, is not that great here, but at least they tried. First of all, the wrestler that you choose doesn't speak. There's subtitles anytime your wrestler says anything, but also the characters that are actually able to speak are very up and down. So what I mean by that is that some of them sound just fine.
Are you sure you understand the implications of the match?
And then there's the other ones that sound like they're slowly trying to move away from the microphone.
Yeah, why don't you tell me something? Where are your ratings gonna be if all of us decide we're done playing your games, huh?
But for the sake of this video, I chose to dive into some of the stories for y'all. And what better choice than the doctor of thugonomics himself, my boy John Cena. And off rip, you get tossed into a storyline with Rene Dupree and apparently his valet/girlfriend Tori Wilson. And pretty much the storyline here is that you're cucking Rene Dupree. I'm sorry, there's just no other way to put it. So Renee has been losing a lot, but he's putting the blame on Tori because she's supposedly been distracting him. But then in comes Cena, who decides to play Captain Save-A-Ho, talking about how she deserves better and Renee's a loser. And I mean, He ain't wrong. The man can't buy himself a win in this story. And this man Cena, y'all already know, was the OG Rizzler, so any chance he gets, he all up on Tori. Going as far to invade the Divas locker room while Renee laying in the ring after yet another L, talking about how you try to check on her. And apparently the Divas locker room sign is non-existent because in comes Renee Dupree literally threatening your life and then challenging you to a match the next week. And because this game knows no boundaries, it is basically insinuated that you smashed this man's girl. And because it's Renee Dupree and you're John Cena, it's an easy win for you. So the man decides to pull an 05 Edge, and I'm supposed to believe Cena's the good guy? But it's all good because Renee Dupree got his revenge after the match, beating you down with a steel chair, and then he challenges you to a last man standing match at Judgment Day. But the thing is now, Tori Wilson's contract is on the line, which I mean is a little bit more sensible than it being like Trish's panties, which yes, was an actual story in this season mode. And you know, because it's Renee Dupree, you just beat him again. Easy W. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this man might be more cooked than 2024 Finn Balor. So pretty much you win Tori Wilson over and she becomes an option as a manager whenever you want her to be. And I was gonna stop here, but then I got the option to fight for the WWE title, so let's jump into that storyline. So now SmackDown GM Kurt Angle throws you in a non-title match with WWE Champion JBL. And right when you're about to pin him, there's a cutscene where JBL kicks out, rolls out the ring, grabs a steel chair and hits you with it to cause a DQ. Which, hey, sounds like something JBL would have done in 2004, so there's that realism. But the next week, Kurt Angle gives you a rematch, this time a no DQ match. So it really seems like Kurt's got your back here. Keep that in mind. And in the middle of that match, you get a run-in from Rico of all people, but you still beat JBL anyways just to get jumped after the bell. But the good thing is, Kurt Angle's got your back, so you'll get your title match at Vengeance in a steel cage match. And because John Cena is like that, despite coming out limping on SmackDown with a neck brace and a wrapped up arm, and actually beating Rico in a no DQ match, he beats JBL for the WWE title. Damn. Death, taxes, and John Cena beats JBL for a world title. Love to see it. So then from there, you go into a storyline where Kurt Angle all of a sudden doesn't have your back anymore and just won't let you defend your championship because he needs to supposedly protect you for them ratings, despite him throwing you in a couple random triple threats, one being a steel cage with Big Show and The Undertaker that I barely won, and the other being a ladder match against Booker T and RVD, which I lost. Hey, I never said I was the GOAT at this game, all right? So then your opponents start to get frustrated and they all demand a title match. So what does Kurt do? He throws everybody into an Elimination Chamber match at SummerSlam, which of course is another W for our boy Cena. Luckily, there was no money in the bank to spoil the party this time. But that's where I kind of stopped the season mode for now. I'm looking forward to going back and playing a little bit more to see what kind of stories I come across. And yo, like I said, there was that story where Trish Stratus's panties were on the line at WrestleMania. This game is just something else. But I will say, while the stories aren't exactly anything amazing, they definitely are not bad. It actually feels like THQ made an effort here, and that's honestly how I feel about this game as a whole. I don't think this game gets enough flowers, and I honestly think it comes down to the fact that it was dropped right in between two all-time games, one being Here Comes the Pain, and the other being SVR 06. And while, yeah, I'll agree, both those games are better than that, and I'd rather play them both, that just goes to show you that comparison can really be the thief of joy. Because if you just look at the game for what it is, to me, it still holds up as a decent wrestling game. There's no doubt that this game has its flaws, but the gameplay is still really fun. Season mode is wild for better or for worse. And there's things that it improved from the year before, and there's a lot of firsts that this game brought to the table that future games would build on and benefit from. Hell, I forgot to mention, this was the first WWE game with an online mode, which granted, it wasn't much. It was just either you do a bra and panties match or you do a regular singles match, but at least this game started it all, for better or for worse. This game right here basically signified a change in wrestling games. Like, the SmackDown series was over and it was time for something new. And if you think about it, SmackDown versus Raw crawled, so 06 can walk and eventually 07 can run. But we'll dive into those games another day. So yeah, it's far from perfect, but in my opinion, the first SmackDown vs. Raw game is definitely far from bad. And I'll always have love for this game for starting the series that is near and dear to a lot of our hearts. But let me know in the comments what you thought about the original SmackDown vs. Raw. Let me know whatever memories you may have for this game, whatever nostalgia it brings back. Let me know, man. Let's have a conversation in the comments. But I appreciate you for watching. Appreciate you for making it to the end. I definitely want to keep making videos like this, reviewing old wrestling games for sure. So if you like this, like the video, comment down below, share the video around, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed. I'll see y'all in the next one. I'm out of here. I'm gone.